Alright folks, so we have a Coleman Powermate 5500 that won't start. It has an old Tecumseh style engine, which I haven't seen one of these in a while. This must have been one of the last ones ever made. It's an 11 horsepower. And you'll hear me talk a lot of crap about Tecumseh, but this engine design was not too bad. Particularly the carburetor design. And let me show you what I mean. So this one won't start after sitting for years and years and years. So we're going to have to get into the carburetor. And this carburetor design, Tecumseh used on many different size horsepower engines, vertical shafts and horizontal shafts on lawnmowers and chippers and everything else. But they're pretty slick to work on. Most of the components are located in the float bowl there, and all you have to do is take that float bowl off and start getting to business. You know, with the generator, you want to make sure that they're reliable, and part of doing that is to make sure to drain out the fuel tank and dry it out and blow it out. Make sure if there's any sediment in there that get it out of there, so you know you have a nice clean gas tank. Alright, let's drain this gas here. Folks always seem to fill it right up to the rim before they bring it in. I've already removed the hose clamp. And just be careful when pulling this off. But you don't want to break that nipple there. Alright, let's let this drain. Not like that. So I want to completely drain the gas tank. And then we'll take off the float bowl and take a look inside. I'll show you how easy it is. Alright. Poke some towels down in there. Help dry things out. Let it sit out in the sun for a few hours, and then I'll blow some air in there, and any dried up sediment that's left in the tank will come out. Okay, let me show you how to get this float bowl off of here. Real easy. So this is what it looks like. You can see basically it's just that metal clip that holds it on. And so what you do, see if I can hold the camera, just put anything in there and you pry it down. Just like that. And you bend it out of the way, and just like that the whole float bowl comes off. But there is a tube up in there you got to be careful about. Your emulsion tube, see that black tube? Don't break that. And you also have a gasket there, and I'll show you what's inside this float bowl. One thing I see in here is bad gas. You can actually reuse these gaskets as long as they're not in too bad a shape. And there's your setup, folks. You also have a component, your main jet is back behind this screw. Careful with the little nozzle here because there's a spring underneath. Now this one's stuck in place. There we go. Oh! Well, that was bad news. But you can see I pulled out the nozzle, and if you look close you can see contaminants on it down here. You also have an O-ring down there, but also don't lose the spring So down in that hole there's a spring. Normally it comes out, but there must be a lot of stuff down in there holding it in place. There we go. Yeah, see all that crap that came out with it? Alright, so don't lose this stuff. And to pop the float out, the hinge pin there basically just pops into place. So be careful when you pop it in and out that you don't break the tabs that hold it in. And that little brass component there we need to make sure is cleared out. Yeah. Alright, so to get this out, you should just be able to kind of pull up on it. There we go. Don't lose your float needle. Don't lose your hinge pin. Yeah, if you look inside that carburetor, you can see there's a lot of stuff in there that needs to come out. But we also have to remove this. You can just use a big fat screwdriver for that usually. And there's a little gasket there. You can see on the bolt. And you have another spring down in there, which attached to that spring, this is your main jet, and as you can see, this one's plugged. But more importantly is down in here you have an O-ring that always needs to be replaced, and it's deep. And you want to be careful not to mess things up too much by trying to get it out of there. But you do have to get it out of there and replace it. Come on, you little bugger, where are you? There you are. Sometimes you have to take this thing out in pieces. There it is. It came out through there. That little passageway there. So there's the O-ring. Now this O-ring comes out of this hole usually, but I pushed it through and it came out through there. But if you look close, I don't know if you can see what happens to that O-ring, but it kind of starts to close off. So you got to replace it every time. And make sure to poke out the hole here in your main jet. This one's plugged for sure. Alright, let's start cleaning this stuff up. And we'll also have to replace the O-ring here. It just comes right off. And we're going to want to make sure all the holes in this nozzle, including all the way up through the middle, that everything's cleared out, because I can see a lot of stuff. Because I can see there's some stuff on here. Yeah, see the stuff in there? So we might have to replace the needle seat, which is down in this hole here. It's that little white rubber piece, which the needle valve sits up in. But first, let's clean this up. Clean all this up. And I just wanted to show you what it looks like up under here. You can see it's just a flat metal surface. So you just want to make sure that you clean all that up and that none of those holes are plugged. Alright, so I've cleaned out all the carburetor parts. Make sure they're nice and spotless. The float, all the little springs and whatnot. But we do have to take out that little white component down in there. That's called the valve seat. I have a special tool I bought from Tecumseh. And that's the part number there. You can use anything, just be careful not to scrape the walls at all. But basically you just put this little hook down in here and pull that little, see that? Pull that little bad boy out. And I'll also want to make sure to get down in there with the Q-tip, make sure to clean it out in case there's anything stuck. As you can see, that's right where the gas line comes in. And I'll spray a little lubricant, help make putting the new one nice and easy. Right here is the Tecumseh part number. And it comes in a little kit with a new seat and new needle valve, because we'll be replacing that needle also. And you got to be careful here, because if you look, this little doodad, this seat has grooves on one side and not the other. So you have these grooves on this one side, and the other side is just flat. And you basically install it. You want the grooves that are on here to go down when you're installing it like this. So I'll use the other part of the tool like that, and you see we have the groove side showing, and then we'll push it into place. You don't have to ramrod it in there, but just push it down firmly. Yeah, we should be good. All right. I made sure to clear out that little brass hole. It's pretty small. Took a little piece of wire and poked it down through there. Alright, so let's go ahead and work on the nozzle here. And I have this little tool, and I'm basically just going to pull this little O-ring off like so. And I bought a whole bag of these aftermarket. I think that's the genuine Tecumseh part number right there, but they're aftermarket O-rings. And these seem to work as well, and they're a heck of a lot cheaper than buying Tecumseh parts. And I use these O-rings to replace all the O-rings in the carburetor. Tecumseh may offer different sizes, I'm not sure, but I just use the same for the nozzle and for the main jet. So let's go ahead and get out a couple of these. Alright. We'll just stretch it over the top there, just like that. Alright. So let's go ahead and put in, alright, onto the main jet area, which this is the main jet, and you do have to make sure that the hole, down through the center there is cleared out. That's what was plugged up on this one. And make sure to clean down in there as well. But before you reinstall this, if you remember, it went in just like that. We have to put an O-ring down in there. So here we go. Drop this little bad boy in there. Alright. You can see him down in there. But we do want to push it all the way into place. You can see down through there. Alright, that O-ring is pushed into place all the way down in there. And now we install the main jet. Make sure it's nice and clean. Poke him down in there. Make sure to clean off this bolt too. And make sure you still have a good gasket on there. Alright. Get my big ass screwdriver and tighten that up. Now this is a screwdriver. Big ass screwdriver. Okay. Alright, good and tight. Okay, we're looking pretty good. Yeah, so let's go ahead and install the float. This is the new needle valve. It just kind of snaps into place here. And we put our hinge pin. And remember this, just make sure you get the needle valve into the hole there. Now the hinge pin pops into place once everything else is in place. Sometimes easier said than done. There we go. And make sure your hinge pin is centered like so. And then you just snap it into place. Make sure it's snapped in on both sides. And there we go. Ready to install the nozzle. And I'll spray a little bit of lube down in there just to make it easy. And don't forget, this spring goes in first. Then the nozzle. Kind of pops into place. And then you just look at the pattern on this thing and line up the holes. It looks like that's how that goes. You push it down and then you install this back on the carburetor. Let's do that. And here are the only parts that are left over when you do a carburetor rebuild on these, unless you have to replace that gasket, which you rarely have to. Okay, here we are underneath. Make sure that's nice and clean, and have this thing go back in there like this. So we move this little clip aside, poke him back up into place. Ta-da! That's how easy it is. And I'll make sure that the gas tank is good and dried out before I hook the fuel line back up here. And you can see over on this side we have a shut-off valve and a fuel filter. It'll probably be a good idea to replace the fuel filter, so I think I'll do that too. These little 90-degree pliers, almost 90-degree, are great for hose clamps. This fuel line is still in pretty good shape too. It's still pliable and no cracks in it, so I'm not going to change that. So all we need to do is fill it with gas and test it out. It's starting to rain out here. I don't want any water to get back into the gas tank, that's for sure. Alright, that should be enough for testing purposes. Fuel valve is already open. I don't see any carburetor leaks. Let's see what happens. I'll turn it a little bit so the muffler is not right at the camera. On, choke,